Hey, this is Ken Finnan at Capital Advantage Tutoring, and it's my job to get you past the Series 7 exam and the SIE exam. That's what this is for. This is part 3 after a long, long wait. It's almost been a year since I did the first 2. I did G1 through 15, I did 15 through 25, and now we're going to do G26 to see how far I get. Who knows? Hopefully I can get like 10 or 15 in before I fall asleep. So G26 is where we're starting, and let's get going. So G26 of the MSRB rules for the Series 7 and the SIE exam, we're going to talk about them. So the G26 is about transferring assets. So if you're going to leave from one broker-dealer to another. So if you're leaving JP Morgan and going to Schwab, that kind of thing. So if you go and you want to go from JP Morgan to Schwab, you go to Schwab under G26, you're going to fill out the form, list all your assets, and that's called the receiving firm. Schwab will be the receiving firm. They send the form. It's an ACAT. It's almost like the ACAT form with FINRA, but it's MSRB. A lot of the MSRB rules kind of mirror FINRA stuff, so don't sweat these too much. So now you fill out the form, and then they send it over to the carrying firm, JP Morgan. JP Morgan has 1 day to verify everything. Once they verify and validate, they validate all the assets, whatever it is, they freeze the account, and no more orders can be taken in the JP Morgan account, the carrying firm. They have to all be given to the new one. All open orders are canceled. The accounts are frozen. You can't do anything. Once they validate it, now they can take exception to some of it, like if it's a non-transferable asset or something like that, or if the account's closed or flat or something like that, or there's nothing there. But they can't dispute the money amount or the securities amount. Whatever they have on the books, they send over and then they work on it. So they can't hold it saying, hey, we disagree, and then not send anything over. So once they validate, all orders that you have to give go to the receiving firm, the Schwab in this case. So going after this, they have 3 days to get the assets over. So within 3 days, JP Morgan, the carrying firm, has to send all the orders over to the receiving firm, which is Schwab. That's it. Boom. Okay, now G27, this is a big one. This is going to take us a while. This is why I don't know how far I'm going to get before I fall asleep. Okay, G27 is the supervision of personnel. This could be a big one, so it could take a while. This is why I'm not sure I'm going to get through too many of them tonight. And then we'll just do it. Maybe there's going to be 5 of the G rule things. So G27 is about the supervision of personnel. Okay. So we have to make sure that we have a written record. They have to have a written record of supervisors. Who's supervising what? Every register rep that has a supervisor, there's a written record for it. We have to establish a review period for when you're going to review the offices and stuff like that. And everything has to be in writing. So we have to have appropriate principal, appropriate principal who is qualified. They're supposed to do everything they can to make sure they're qualified to perform these acts, and to handle the assigned responsibilities. Every year, we have to have a compliance meeting. So we have to do a compliance meeting, and you're going to go over all the new compliance rules, and it's not a specific thing what has to be in there. They have to have an annual compliance meeting every year. They have to have written supervisory procedures. That's if you ever hear people talk about WSPs, that's written supervisory procedures. That's like the Bible for compliance, that everything you can and can't do is in there, what you're supposed to do. Usually it should be like a menu of do this, do that, all that. That's the written supervisory procedures. You have the annual meeting. You also have certain general things like how the principal handles a complaint. It has to be written in the WSPs. You have the periodic review of the principal of each office. You have to maintain records, okay, whether it's 3 years or 6 years or a lifetime, all that stuff. We've been doing another one. Remember, most records are 3 years. Complaints are 4. So, and then if you've ever seen my thing with the big sacks, blotters, general ledgers, stock records, customer information, and statements are 6 years. Anything to do with the formation of the broker-dealer, like the articles of incorporation or the partnership agreement, is lifetime. Usually lifetime plus 3 years, because you can be sued for 3 years after you're shut down. Also, the whole thing about tape recording. So if you have too many register reps from a banned or expelled broker-dealer, FINRA and the MSRB will notify you, really FINRA will notify you and say, hey, you have to start taping. Once they give you that notice, you have 60 days to either start firing people or start taping. and keep a record of it for 3 years and everything. Now, because you went over a threshold, say you have 40% of your reps are from an expelled firm. If you're a smaller size, they're going to make you record. You can't hire more people to dilute that. The only thing you can do is fire the people from the expelled thing to lower you below the threshold or start taping. You'll have to keep a copy of those written supervisory procedures in an office, an updated copy available for anyone to grab if they want. It's just you have to have it there. Usually what they do is you leave it electronically and you just email it to people so they have it on their server. It's not that big a deal. You have to review. So if you have an office of supervisory jurisdiction, that has to be reviewed every year, that office, and then the branches are every 3 years. Very, very similar to the FINRA rules. We have to review the correspondence, right? So if it's correspondence, you review on a spot check basis. If it's retail, you have to get it pre-approved. What's retail? If you're sending something investment related to more than 25 retail customers, doesn't even have to be customers, just retail people. And then the bigger one is institutional. If you're only sending it to institutions, it's spot check. So correspondence and institutional are spot checked. That's where they read your emails and stuff, not all of them, a percentage. And the retail has to be done pre-approved by a principal. Okay, we also have to have procedures that are going to basically review and make reasonable. This is the key thing. Everything has to be reasonable. It's reasonably designed to what the hell is that? Reasonably designed to review and monitor transmittal of funds, customer changes of address, changes of investment objectives, stuff like that. Anything to do with the customer changing, you have to have some sort of procedures to be able to handle that. You don't have to be perfect because if somebody changes and doesn't tell you, but you have to have a procedure like, okay, if we see them say something on Instagram that they lost their job, maybe you should be calling them up and saying, hey, did anything change? That kind of thing. If you have certain register reps who are kind of like not such good guys, then you would have to you have to bring up heightened supervision, or maybe you read more of their emails or something like that, where you're looking at them in a more stringent manner than the other reps. Here's the wrap up on this, so I don't totally bore you. They have to have written procedures for supervisors, principals to be supervising the reps, how they handle it and what they do. It all has to be in writing. They don't tell you exactly how to do it. They just tell you have to have a plan to monitor customer stuff, to monitor the reps, to inspect the offices, stuff like that. That's G27. Okay, G28, that's a fun one, right? This is, everyone knows this because it's basically all but one thing mirrored from the FINRA rule. This is if you have a brokerage account outside your firm. So you have to give written notice. That's the difference. FINRA specifically says you need approval, which is where it's going to go, because an MSRB firm is almost always going to be a FINRA firm. So if you are working for a MSRB firm, the MSRB requires that you notify your firm that if you or your minor children or your spouse opens a brokerage account at another firm, and all the duplicate confirms and statements have to be sent to the employing firm. That's it. Okay. The only exception to this is if you are in a fund, like if you're in a muni fund, like if your account is at a place that is only muni funds, these don't apply. Because their idea is that you're not front running or day trading, or you're not day trading funds, and you're not insider trading because you're not a freaking fund. So nobody cares. So G28 requires you to notify and get duplicate confirms and statements sent to your employer for you, your spouse, and your minor children. I do think that if they're in your household, that even if they're 18 or 19, you're going to be subject to that, but the rule is minor. Remember, FINRA requires approval before it. There's nowhere in the rules in G28 where it says approval, but FINRA rules kind of apply here anyway, because you're going to be a FINRA firm. So you're going to need approval before you open a brokerage account. Okay, G29. There it is. It's actually reserved. There's a blank in it. It just says reserved. There's no G29 yet. They're leaving it because they have them all kind of like categorized, and G29 is for something they just figured they don't need it yet. Good. That's easy. G29. I love it. Okay. Remember that. Very important for the test. G30. This is the easy one. It's kind of an FU from MSRB because they don't tell you what to charge, but it's all your commissions and markups must be fair and reasonable, taking into account everything. Taking into account how many bonds you have, how often you did it, how hard it is to find, all that stuff has to be fair and reasonable. Most people think it's around 3%. So on a bond, it's a $30 commission, if you want to think of it that way. But fair and reasonable is the word. So you can go higher or lower if you think you need to, if you think it's fair and reasonable. That's G30. The G30, I'm going to add one thing. which is a weird one that you should know, the dealer is entitled to a profit. So that could be a reason you charge a commission, that you're entitled to a profit. Sounds weird, but that is part of the fair and reasonable, that we are allowed to make money. Okay, G31 is the one I talk about all the time with my students. G31 is reciprocal dealings with an investment company. So it's like one paragraph. Everything else, all these other G rules are like 5 pages of interpretive notices and all that. This is not, okay? This is one paragraph. You cannot solicit business from an investment company in exchange for finding customers for them. Meaning, if you're a registered rep and a customer of yours is an investment company, mutual fund, you cannot say, oh, give me orders to execute and I'll find customers for you. That's like a quid pro quo. You can't do that. It's reciprocal dealing. That's a no-no. Okay, G32 is a requirement for underwriters to send documents to the purchasers of the bonds and to Emma for electronic filing. So that the preliminary official statement, the official statement, the financials, anything to do with the primary offering, anything about advance refunding, we have to send to them. Now, basically, if we're going to send if we're going to sell a bond to you, we have to get that to you. We have to get this stuff to you prior to settlement of the transaction. So the point is, a lot of times they're going to say you have to send it usually 3 business days prior to settlement, so that you know it will get there in time to be considered delivered before settlement. Because remember, settlement's T+2. So all the docs that have to be sent will have to be sent before settlement so that people can make their own decision. And if they really don't like it, they can probably find a way to back out. G33 is about the accrued interest, how to calculate. If you could see the formulas that are on the screen, it's ridiculous. They'd scare the hell out of you. But for the Series 7 and the SIE exam, you do not need to know all that stuff. What you need to know is that you count back to the last payment date up to but not including the settlement date, which is T+2. So if we buy stock on Monday, say Monday, May 10th, it settles on the 12th. You count to the 11th of May and say it's a J&J bond, January and July. You go all the way back to January and you count January, February, March, April. That's 4 times 30. That's 120 plus 11 days in May. Why only 11? Because we settle on the 12th. If I bought it on the 10th, so it's 131 days. That's what G33 is about, is figuring that stuff out. Remember, on Munis, it's a 30-day month, 360-day year, and they settle T+2. And you count up to but not including settlement. Also, remember this, that it's always the day before settlement, no matter when it is. So if this thing settles the day after Christmas, you account till Christmas on accrued interest. If it counts to July 5th, you count to July 4th. If that's the day off, whatever it is, it's always the day before settlement, no matter what it is. G34, this is an easy one. This requires underwriters who are taking their muni public for them to apply for and get a QSIP number. What's a QSIP number? It's an identification program. I'm not even trying to say the whole thing. It's like a VIN number. Okay, so it's like a certificate, whatever, barcode, whatever you want to call it. It's an identification number for each bond, not each, like you have a bond, but like if New York City issues a 5% GO, it has one QSIP number for that. And if they issue a 4.4, that's a different QSIP number because it's a different bond. So that's all they have to do is make sure that that has been applied for and then attached to the bond. E35 really is very simple. It's just, it takes all the bank dealers to deal. The banks who deal in muni bonds are subject to FINRA arbitration rules. So what is that? One, you can't require customers to find arbitration. But let's talk about the dealers. Any kind of dispute resolution is going to be done through arbitration. If it's between 0 and 100 grand, it's going to be one arbitrator. If it's over 100 grand, it's going to be 3 arbitrators. If it's under 50, it's still going to be one, but you can do it by paper without a hearing, save a little money. If there's a human being involved, whether it's a rep or an individual customer, it's always going to lean public. What the hell do you mean by that? Arbitrators, there's 2 types. There's non-public, which is industry insider, industry people, and then there's public people not in our industry. So if there's a human being involved, it's always going to be at least, hopefully, one not public. So what happens is the arbitration process goes like this. I sue you, whatever it is, we go through arbitration, you get a list of arbitrators, you check off the ones you want, I check off the ones I want, and then whatever ones match, we kind of go with if we can, and then we decide. So if it's a human being involved, there's going to be a list of public ones, and I can choose from them. And it's always going to be like if there's 3 arbitrators and there's human being involved, it's going to be 2 public and 1 non-public. Now, let's go back to the Schwab JP Morgan thing. Say they have a dispute, since it's 2 firms, 2 broker dealers or even bank dealers, it's going to be all non-public, whether it's 1 or 3, it's always going to be non-public arbitrators. G37 is the one everyone knows about, political contributions, okay? So an MFP, you're not going to have to define it. It's a municipal finance professional. MFP, they're not going to make it define it, just understand. MFPs are bound by this rule. First of all, the rule says broker-dealers, advisors, and bank dealers cannot contribute because they're not individuals. The rule states that no one can contribute. The exception is if you can vote for the person. So the way we do it is you can only contribute to a campaign of a political operative if you can vote for the person. And there's limits on that. If you give it to someone that you can't vote for or more than the limit, or the firm gives it, or even a PAC that they control gives it, then they're banned from doing business for 2 years. Okay, now jump onto this. So you can give up to $250 per election cycle. So if they have a primary and a general, $250, $250. That's great. If you are married or have a partner or have a joint account, you can actually give more, only if you both sign the check. So if you have a check of a joint account and only you, the MFP, sign it, then the entire check counts as a contribution. And if it's more than $250, we have a problem. 2 year out. If you have a joint account that's 50-50 and you and your wife or husband or partner or whatever sign it, you both sign it, then half the check is from you, half the check is from them. So if you do a $500 check and you both sign it, then $250 is from you, $250 is from them, and you are good to go. That's G37. That's what you have to know. So G38 is very simple. It's you can't pay, as you, meaning a broker-dealer or an MFP or an agent, cannot pay a third party to solicit business for you unless they are affiliated with your broker-dealer, okay? They have to be registered. You can't pay someone to get you business. That's the whole point. You're taking these stupid tests. So you can get paid for bringing in the dough, right? So for the Series 7 and the SIE, you need to know that you cannot pay someone who is unregistered for business. And on this rule, you have to pay someone that is associated with your broker-dealer. So that means if you have someone that you want to pay for them, there has to be some affiliation with your broker-dealer for you to pay them for the business. So G39 is the telemarketing one. We all know this. You can't call before 8 a.m. You can't call after 9 p.m. of the person's time. There is a do not call list you have to keep updated. You have to have training. There's also a national do not call list that's just the Federal Trade Commission that keeps. So you have to have written procedures. You have to train everyone, and you have to keep a record of who you're calling and stuff. If there are exceptions, these are them. One, if you have a personal relationship with a person. If you have an ongoing business relationship. But if you have an ongoing business relationship and they ask to be on the do not call list, kind of terminates the relationship. Or if you have prior written consent, meaning like if you send out a flyer and they come back and say, oh yeah, please call me, that's written consent. So again, G39 is all about the telemarketing, cold call rules, same as FINRA rules pretty much. They're almost word for word the same thing. As I said, for the Series 7 and SIE exam, these are not super, super difficult. It's just everyone gets inundated with like G48, 49, and they get worried. And the exam doesn't go, what does G40 do? It gives you a story. You just got to know this. That's why I'm not worried about the numbers so much. So G40, as I just said, don't worry about the numbers. G40 is basically if a municipal advisor is advertising, they can't fucking lie. They can't publish false or misleading advertisements. They have to, about their services or what they can do. They have to have basically content standards that they have to follow. They cannot lie. That's what it is. And all advertising needs to be approved prior to use. First use. G41, all it means is you have to have an AML, anti-money laundering compliance program in place. They don't tell you how to do it. They just tell you what it is. I'll try to do a video on money laundering and put it up here. Okay. So G41 is just, you have to have an anti-money laundering program, and it has to be in writing, and it has to be tested annually. Okay, G42, really it's just how a municipal advisor has to handle themselves. If they have conflicts of interest, they have to disclose it. If they fee split, they have to let people know. Basically, if they have potential conflicts of interest, they have to disclose it. They have to make sure that they're not spreading rumors or omitting facts that material facts. Remember, you don't have to give everyone all facts. You have to give material facts. The whole point of here is duty of care. For the Series 7 and SIE, you should be just making sure that you're doing right by the client and letting them know stuff that's going on. It's all about transparency and making sure you're doing the right thing for your clients. G43, gosh, we're so close to the end. G43 is brokers. These are brokers that act on behalf of other dealers and brokers to kind of hide, wear a beard so that you don't know who there is. So let's say Goldman Sachs is buying bonds, and every day they're in there buying it. Well, don't you think that at some point you go, hey, Goldman's in here, I'm going to raise my offer because they're a buyer. So what happens is they use someone else. They use a broker, like a teller pre-bond or a GFI or something like that. And what they're doing is they're giving the orders to them. Brokers act as an agent for the most part. They don't deal with retail clients, and they have to always get they're supposed to try to get a fair and reasonable price for their clients. So they'll send out things like bids wanted. We're looking for a bid. I'm a seller. They can't do it unless they're actually representing. So they're not supposed to do a bids wanted unless you're actually representing a seller. And they're not supposed to do we're looking for offers unless they're representing a buyer. So that's C43, not that big a deal. It's not heavy on the S7 and the SIE, but you just got to know that a broker's broker is a broker who acts on behalf of other brokers. Okay, G44, supervisory and compliance obligations of Muni advisors. So this is for the advisors, the one who meet the definition of Muni advisors. They're not going to make you figure that out. Not for the Series 7 or 6 or the SIE, maybe for one of the 50 exams, maybe, but not this. So this rule says you have to have a supervisory assistant to look over their people. You have to have written supervisory procedures. You can't just verbal it. You have to have a principal overlooking each rep or MFP. You have to have processes to do the compliance, handle complaints and stuff like that, and to watch over, look at emails, all that stuff. That's what G44 is doing. You must have a plan in place. G45, probably not testable, but for the Series 7 and 6 and SAE, there's probably not going to ask this at all. But it's basically certain information for municipal fund securities that have to be reported. That's it. Okay, there's no G46, so boom, we'll just go right on that one. Just remember that it's heavily tested on the thing that's not there. Okay, G47 is basically when you do a trade, whether you buy or sell it, primary or secondary or whatever, you have to disclose certain things to the customer orally or at least in writing prior to the time of the trade. And what they're going to say is called all material information, like has it been called, stuff like that. It basically big stuff that's important for them to make a decision. So some of the things you may have to disclose are things like, is it a variable rate? Okay, so how often does it reset? What does it do? Stuff like that. The auction rates, you have to explain that they could fail and that they do reset, but there's an auction, and if it fails, nobody needs to do it. You have to give them the credit risk and the ratings, basically if there's any kind of liquidity stuff, and if it's insured or not, if it's an OID, like the fact that you're gonna have to accrete maybe, that you have to take some tax stuff on there, all things that have to do with disclosing material information to your customer before they buy it, so that they know, they're aware of the important things. You don't have to disclose all. Remember that you don't have to disclose all information, just all material information. And that's G47. Okay, G48 is basically transactions with sophisticated muni market professionals. These are like the banks, the broker dealers, people with over 50 million. They loosen the amount of disclosures. You don't need as many time of trade disclosures. You can actually, you don't have to worry about the suitability nearly as much as if you do with a retail person. That's what G48 is. It's just loosening the restrictions if you're dealing with sophisticated municipal market professionals. Again, the banks, the broker dealers, people with 50 million or more, they don't really care about every little thing. They're sophisticated. They can usually protect themselves. Okay, guys, that's all of the G rules. I can't believe I got through all the way through 48. If you like what I'm doing, please hit like, subscribe, share, tell other people, tell your friends in college, tell other people. I'm here to help. Don't forget, every Tuesday and Thursday night, I have a live Q&A. Ask any question on any printer exam, and I will answer it. Have a great night.